massive passive income, but didn't know how to get there? Listen to the Massive Passive Show. You'll hear top investors and experts share how to tap into the incredible opportunities that Houston offers real estate investors. A favorable business climate, low cost of housing, and that Texas wildcatter mentality are just some of the reasons that the top investors nationwide are flocking to Texas. The Massive Passive Show starts now.
Hello, Houston and YouTube world. This is James Haney with the Massive Passive Radio Show, brought to you by Alamo RIA. Again, this is James Haney with the Massive Passive Show, brought to you by the Alamo RIA. Our website is massivepassiveshow.com. You get all of our information there. We have a wonderful show today. We're going to be talking about some different things to look for when crunching the numbers, when you're looking at investment properties. We got a few other things, and then our upcoming events. And I am joined here by Pat Reisinger and Ray Sasser. How are you guys doing this morning?
Doing great. How you doing, buddy?
Doing good. That was Pat Reisinger, by the way.
And this is Ray, and I'm doing fine too.
Yeah, what are you doing? Ray's on his phone right now. He's supposed to be doing the radio show.
Yeah, me too.
Well, if you are going to depend on me to do the show, I mean, we're going to lose listeners here. So we need to get you guys involved in the show.
Yeah, you guys hang out here for a second. We're just trying to make sure all the bases are covered this week.
So let me go ahead and we'll reverse the order a little bit. I just want to share some of our upcoming events. We have our RIA meeting in San Antonio this Tuesday. We're going to have Equity Trust there as the keynote speaker. And then next Saturday in Houston, we will have Tom Berry come join us. He'll be the keynote speaker. And then we do have some online classes coming up, talking about crunching the numbers and negotiating. And then in April, we have a bus tour, or we're going to use that term loosely because we're going to go walk some properties and look at different conditions and go over the rehab numbers and all the aspects of rehabbing and investing. So again, you can get that stuff on massivepassiveshow.com. That information will be there. So that is a recap of what we have coming up.
Yeah, and this is going to be pretty good on this bus tour because I already have a property that it looks like that I'm going to be the project manager on it. That's a really major rehab. We'll be tearing off the roof and reframing all the rafters and all that too. And this is going to be a really good exercise for people to see how a major rehab is done,
And another thing that we might want to, dabble in just a little bit is Ray just mentioned before the show that he wants to, in addition to the RIAs, he wants to, one of the things that we'll be doing is be starting some focus groups, and he wants to actually start a Airbnb and short-term rental focus group.
Yeah, there's no want to. We're starting.
Really put him on the spot. Now he's got to talk about it.
Sorry, I used the wrong word.
No, I've already decided we're doing it, and it's. I'll admit it's purely for selfish reasons because we committed to doing 5 of them, and we've got our third one started, and I really had this weird idea that I could do one a week, get them online because we already own the properties. And that was really a stupid idea. And so my expectations are way off base. I don't know what's right, what's not right, but we're learning really fast. And I'm a very intense learner, so I read everything I can. I talk to anybody I can. And so we're going to start a focus group. I want to run it and maybe have a couple other Airbnb people. I'm a beginner in it, but we're going to be looking primarily for people who are already doing Airbnb. So if you have in the initial stage, we'll shoot for maybe 25 to 30 people, and if you have one Airbnb or 100, we'd love to have you in our group, and we'll have a monthly meeting. We'll probably move that to quarterly meeting after the first 3 or 4 monthly meetings. So quick. First of all, Ray, I got to give you kudos on because I've seen you go through the past few months and working on this, and the average investor or the beginning investor, might have said, well, you know what, this is not for me. But you've
you have been that MFO, that monster for outcome,
Right.
and you're getting them, and so I want to give you kudos to that. But
Thank you.
I do want to ask you, so far, because we always hear about the success stories. Well, I did this flip, I made $100,000, or I did this wholesale deal and made $80,000, and blah blah blah. But we hardly ever hear people talk about the lessons that they actually learned. So what has been the biggest lesson so far that you've learned by putting these Airbnbs and going down this avenue?
I think the hardest thing I'm dealing with is figuring out how to do this without me doing it. Without me cleaning the Airbnb, without me doing the repairs, without me talking to the people. I'm trying to do it where I can be a manager of it, but not be the employee of it. And that's a real struggle. And that's not something that's optional. It's something that we absolutely, totally will achieve. And if that'll be one of the intentions for me of getting the focus group, like how do you scale? How do you get reliable people? How do you get the outcomes? I've asked for a inventory sheet for one of my key people to give it to me, and she can't give it to me. She's not been able to give it to me, and it's really not her fault. She just doesn't have any experience either. She doesn't have like a place to begin from, and so she doesn't know. And yet, without that, you can't run the operation. I mean, if you don't know what you're supposed to have or what supplies you're supposed to have, how are you going to make that work? So stupid little things. Another thing is like somebody says, rent times 3. Well, what does that mean? Rent times 3, does that mean 3 times your monthly rent? Is that a good number? Is rent times 4 a good number? Rent times 2? I've got some theories on that because we've now got them online. We're actually making money with them. So figure out how to get that, what is the right metric to measure this so you can compare one with another. And because if I have that number, let's say that I have that income over what the rent. I love that metric because let's say the classic rent on a property would be $1,200. Well, what's times 3? Is this times 3 my income, my profit, my monthly rent, and whatever that metric is that we're supposed to be using? Then how do we? Then we can measure how one asset's doing compared to another and know if we can improve it. Like if I make this change over here and then I get an improvement, then obviously it's worth it. So it's a lot of stuff to learn, and channels. How do you market? There's ways to market through the different channels it appears to be unlimited. And it appears that most people are doing it wrong. From what I can tell already, I've already come to that observation that most people are missing the big picture. So that's why I want to get a group of smart people around me, and we learn and figure out what the best practices are.
And I tell you, Ray, you just said the key word: get smart people around you. I mean, that's what this is all about. I mean, I've been doing this now for about 15 or 16 years, and this rehab real estate investor market. Before I was a retail guy, right? So, I mean, retail, you just don't need all this stuff. But you're exactly right, is having a team of smart people that you can depend on to get good information.
Yeah, I can't learn what you've learned over the last 35 years. I don't want to go through that pain.
Oh, God. And I tell you what, when
I'd
you
rather
say
just
that,
have it sitting to my left.
when you say that, my mind goes back to when I thought my guts were never going to turn back the right direction from some mistake I made.
Yeah, and the thing is, there's almost nothing out there that's being invented. It's you think it's invented, and Pat was dealing with this 30 years ago. And it's like, and Pat probably said 30 years ago, well, damn, I'll never do that again.
Yeah. Well,
and I want to know all those damn, I'll never do that again.
Well, a lot of guys that know me for like the last 15, 18 years will say, boy, Pat's forgotten more than most people know. And that's because, the longer you live and you're in this business, you're going to see those things and you're going to make mistakes. It's what humans do. We think we're going to shortcut something. And now I've learned that, hey, the shortcut never pays off. Mm-mm. I mean, you really have to kind of think it through and make sure you play the whole movie before you move.
Well, there's a word that somebody used, and now I've taken it as part of my own vocabulary, but there's a thing called best practices. what are best practices, and you can have an intellectual discussion about what is a best practice on anything. And for example, just like I totally underestimated the amount of energy that it takes to get this Airbnb, and it's not me; it's me and 4 other people working on this, and the work and the guys working on the job. But I mean, in our office, we're all taking little pieces of it, and we're barely able to do it. And it's like, we need to know what these best practices are. We need to know what reasonable expectations are when we take something on. And honestly, I think that most people would never start investing if they knew how much was involved in it. But I don't think you need to run from it. You just need to grow into it. And you just need to learn as you go, and you need to surround yourself with people that know how to get the job done.
Well, and something came up recently. We had 2 students that were on the air with us, Matt and Dusty, right? And they're just now getting into the Airbnb, and they got one that they're working on in San Antonio or New Braunfels area, And they brought to mind something, and I never thought about. I keep in my mind as being a novice and not being in the Airbnbs. I'm thinking like people are landing for a week and then they're leaving. Well, they're kind of have a model of someone being there for a couple of months, and by using nurses that need to be in town. And I never thought about that, and so that's why this is so important. Coming to the RIA, going to the listen to the radio show, all the things that we do, because it really teaches you that not to limit your thinking.
It's interesting because as you're talking about that, is people, if you take something as simple as painting and you really understand painting, you realize there's nothing simple about painting.
It's very complicated.
It's very complicated. It requires a lot of knowledge. And then on top of that, the technology is changing, it seems like daily, and you just pick whatever it is, painting or framing or electrical or Airbnb, none of it's simple. And it's like you can go as deep as you want, and you got to have those people around you. And this is a thing, just like as experienced as I am as taking on projects and working my way through them, I had this expectation with Airbnb, and it's because I'm just really coming out of the awareness that I really, really got to double down. Now that I've taken on this tiger, now we let the tiger out of the cage. And now I'm really, I'm on my toes and I'm fighting for my life. And that's really the way it is. I think it has to be that way. And I think when we start a task, we always don't know what we don't know. So we underestimate what the factors are. And the best way to overcome that is surround yourself with the right network. And they say your net worth is your network. That's why. Right. Because whatever you think, it's different. It's different. You can more or less know how a paint job is supposed to be done, but to get that paint job done right, get it done efficiently, get it done where it stays and lasts. That's the genius in this.
And I've learned from my vendors. For instance, I've got a vendor that I've been using for 40 years, a paint vendor. It's a family-owned operation, right? And they turned me on to a latex that came out about 3 years ago that I can paint over enamel and it won't come off.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, and that's
a big problem.
That is huge, because if you have enamel, unless you prime it with Kills or something that bonds, that you can't put latex over. Otherwise, you can just take your fingernail and scratch it off, right?
And that happens. We buy a lot of properties where people have done that, and that latex is just peeling off. It's literally falling on the floor.
You really just have to take paint remover and get it off of there and then start over, because they've just ruined all the trim and the cabinets and everything by doing that. So, that's the cool thing about that we're trying to get across to our listeners, and come to our RIAs and our real estate clubs that we do, like for instance in Houston, the second Saturday every month, and San Antonio's now the second Tuesday.
Yeah. By the way, I wasn't sure if you knew that or not. But,
yeah. Well, I got that information because one of the students up there that's on my Zoom call called me because he wants me to help him on some stuff, and he clued me in right away that change he thought was happening. And so it's a good thing, that's why you want to have this network, right?
Right.
Is that you find out things that sometimes slip through the cracks because there's so much going on,
I I don't want to take a lot of time doing this. The one thing about this radio show, it's always been a lot of fun and been a lot of energy working with you guys. And none of us take any crap from any of the other of us, so it's real good. There's been a person that's always been sitting to my side that none of y'all probably knew since we started this radio show. It was Sharon Fernandez, and she's been fighting cancer for the last couple of years, and she died from that last week, or this week, I guess. And to me, it's a real hard thing to take because she was just such a superstar. She was quiet. But that doesn't mean she was submissive. She was not submissive.
No, she was not submissive. I guarantee you, if there was something that she was going to take control of, she did.
Yeah, and she was a blast. Her and I, with Alamoria, a lot of people don't know this, but we met every week. Spent usually doing our level 10, our traction stuff, for about an hour and a half every week for 8 years or 9 years. I don't even know when we started it. And, I mean, she was right there beside me, or a lot of times I was right there beside her. And, we're going to miss her wisdom, her energy, her knowledge. I mean, she ran a huge operation, maybe the largest operation in San Antonio on residential houses. I'm pretty sure it's in the top 3 or 4. And she was just a genius at putting systems and processes together. It was such a blast to work with her. And we're going to miss her greatly. So, anyway, that's all I get to
Well,
say.
if I start crying after that
Yeah.
testimony,
I know, I'm on tears.
Yes.
tell you, well, I mean, I got to meet her and talk to her several times, and she's really a dynamic person. And but the thing about it, she's not dead. She still lives in our minds, and all the things that we learn from her are going to still be passed on. So.
Yeah, she will definitely be missed. I've had the opportunity to interact with her a few times and even interviewed her on this radio show. And it was great interviews a couple of times. Really great interview. But I wish I could have been around her more because she did have a talent of keeping Ray in line. And I never got to get that from her.
Well, believe me,
No, you haven't learned it yet.
She
She was a lot nicer than me, too.
she'd hear some of my crazy ideas and correct me right away.
All right, but yeah, nice tribute to Sharon. Rest easy. We miss you. We love you. But let's go ahead and get into some of the topics that we were going to talk about as far as like crunching the numbers. But before I hand it back over to Ray, remember our website is massivepassiveshow.com. That's massivepassiveshow.com. You can find out all of our information there. And actually, I think Pat wants to say something right now.
Yeah, real quick, I'd just like to say, our show's really brought by our vendors that pay us money every month for us to help market their businesses. And believe me, all of our businesses on our website either have worked for me and Ray for many years or have definitely been vetted. And so you're safe to use these people. If you have any questions, you can always do a submission on email, and we'll come back to you off our website. But go to massivepassiveshow.com, click on the 3 bars. It will click down, and it will say vendors, and you click on there. All you have to do is give your name and your phone number and your email, which is pretty easy because we want to be able to contact.
And we sell those emails to the car warranty companies, right?
Yeah, right.
Well, what are you doing, Ray?
Come on, Ray. No one's going to go
Where's the
now.
mute button? Ray, see you later, Ray.
Like we need an injection to shoot him right out of here, right?
No,
Listen.
we do not. We protect
We do
your
not
information.
give that information, not even to our vendors. Okay?
Hey, Ray, what's in your drink over there?
Yeah, really.
I saw something somewhere where somebody said they called their husband or wife or brother or sister or somebody and said, "Hey, my car's broken down." And he said, and the response was, "Don't call me. You've had plenty of calls from those car warranty companies."
Well, they're so nice. They're always thinking about me, real quick, I'd like to say about a couple of vendors because they're so well connected. We have a Roger, which is the disaster relief, right? So if you have a problem, you want to get him because he'll get you a lot more money from your insurance company.
I called him, one of my private investor buddies had a big claim, and I called him the other day, and he really helped me out understanding what needed to be done there. I appreciate his help on that.
Well, that's great. And listen, also I'm signing this guy that James connected me with, the Stinky House guy, and he takes care of all your M word issues, and we'll say mildew because we don't like to use the other word, right, too much. But really, I mean, we'll just go ahead and say it. It's mold, right? And because he can get rid of that stuff and give you a certification on it, so that later when you're selling a house, if something comes up, you'll be covered.
And that happens a lot. Like in this past freeze, we bought a property and it had a flood in it because a pipe burst.
Right.
And then we had to get a mold certification, and it was nice to be able to pick up the phone and have a person come and take care of it.
Yeah.
And not run you through the ringer and say, oh, it's going to be a $50,000 repair. They kind of tell you what to do.
Right.
But
exactly.
now Stinky House is not just for mold, right? It's for
all kinds of stuff. Pet stuff. People move out of houses and animals have urinated on the carpet and the floors, and all that has to be taken out. Otherwise, you're just never going to sell that house because that smell is going to be there.
We've done some of the most, maybe one day you and I can tell horror stories on Stinky House problems that we had to overcome.
Oh, God.
And it really you can really spend a lot of money if you don't know what you're doing with that.
I went to a house one time for Meyer Ships, on Ships Dairy and Houston Tobacco Company. He got a bunch of houses, and I went to one time for him and opened the door, and it rained cockroaches, and there were dead rats and a goat in the house.
Well, now I'm going to just tell you, it wasn't raining cockroaches. They were sitting on the top of the door jamb.
Yeah.
When you opened the door, they fell on you.
They fell out. So you want to open the door and stand back before you walk into some of these houses.
Yeah, when you open a door, always look up.
Yeah.
It may be raining
Boy,
roaches.
I mean, I got some stories about houses.
All right.
Me too.
Let's move on.
Yeah. So Ray, you mentioned something a while ago about if new investors or fairly new investors knew how complicated some things were, they might not get involved. And one of those aspects could be numbers and crunching the numbers and everything. So I wanted you to go ahead and simplify some of that. Of course, we don't have 8 hours to go through that because it is definitely a long class. But what are some things that you look at as far as when you crunch numbers?
Well, my goal is cash flow a lot of times. And really, as I've gotten older and we've done more deals, cash flow is not the most important thing, although I want to have cash flow on every deal. The other thing is, what's the future of that asset going to be? In some properties, for example, we're looking for certain types of property that are just cash flow. We don't care. We don't expect ever to increase in value, which is just shocking me. Even those are increasing in value like you wouldn't believe. And so cash flow is really important, especially for certain classes of property. But then just appreciation that it's in the path of progress. If I have enough money to buy one property, I'm going to buy the property that's in the path of progress. If all other things being equal, of course, we're looking at the amount of cash that I need to make the deal work. Is it where there's creative financing involved? In fact, we're teaching. I'm going to be. I may become famous in this towards the end of the month. I'm going to be doing a negotiation class for a bunch of people all over the United States. So I'm real excited about that. I'm actually going to prepare for it.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm like you, though. I'm a legend in my own mind.
Yeah. If you don't believe me, ask me. But creative deals is really good and that's why negotiation has been such a passion with me for the last 20 years. I mean, the first time I heard a negotiator negotiate on a house, I realized there's so much I don't know and don't understand, and I've become a full-time student. And it's not something you can master. I think you can get really good, but don't ever think you can master it because there's always so much to learn. There's always things you don't know when it comes to negotiation. So but being able to put together creative deals makes a difference. Because it's less cash. So the less cash, not bringing a lot of cash to the table is really, really important to me because it means I can do more deals. And there's a common numbers, like one of the things that investors typically look at. I was kind of afraid of this number at first until I realized how simple it is. It's a cap rate. It's a cap rate number, and the cap rate is equal to the net operating income over the value. And so what that means is if the net operating income goes up, the value goes up. That's important. The other thing that helped me really understand it is that a cap rate, what your cap rate is, let's say it's 8% or 10% or 4%, that's what a hands-off investor will earn on his investment. So if a hands-off investor will put $1 million into something and his cap rate's 4%, then he can expect to earn 4% on that investment. Now, there's other things that play into that, like appreciation and things like that, but it's a good way to judge something. So one apartment complex may have a cap rate of 2%, and nowadays that's probably happening, and another apartment complex may have a cap rate of 12%. And something that has a cap rate of 12%, well, obviously everybody and his brother would buy that because they're earning 6 times as much as they would if it were 2%. 2%. The problem is if it's 12%, it probably means if the industry is 2% and you're buying it at 12%, it means it's coming with lots of problems. Mm-hmm. Okay. A lot of those problems relate to reliability of the income or the difficulty in getting that income. For example, you might look at somebody that wants to sell apartments that are weekly rentals and it has this outrageous cap rate. But what they're not figuring in is you've got to go every Friday and Saturday night with a 32 in your waistband and chase around people for your rent. So if you're, be careful how you compare assets in the same class. So cap rate's really important. One of the things I wanted to, this is something that we have to think about what real estate brings to us as investors. And this is why I had, when I worked for a corporation many years ago, 35 years ago, I really started reading about mutual funds and everything, and I put my money in the mutual fund, and it's like I had no control. As much as I wanted to read about that particular mutual fund, and I picked the very best one that was compared by, or that was rated at that time, and as soon as I put my money in there, it started going down. And I don't even understand how. I don't know what, I kind of understand what they invest, but I didn't understand how the companies worked or anything else. And then when real estate came along, I thought, okay, I can control that. I can learn more about the real estate and I can make the buy and sell decisions. I can make the tenant decisions. I can do that. And so so I fell in love with real estate right away. And the first thing, some of the things that real estate brings us is depreciation, which means I can bring partners to the table. If I can bring tax benefits to partners who are high income, now I have partners that can work with me. So depreciation is one of them. Appreciation. If you've been owner financing houses for the last, if that's your exit strategy to buy and then owner finance a house, and you say, oh, but I don't have the headache. Well, when that person that you owner financed that house for 5 years ago, you owner financed it to them for 120, and now that house is worth 180 from 5 years ago, and maybe 250. I mean, those gains have actually happened. That renter looks a whole lot smarter than you because they didn't get, even though you didn't have to plunge the commode, and you didn't have to chase them around for the rent, and you didn't have to evict them, and you didn't have to do all that stuff. And you owner financed it, and people are putting more money down, and they're more reliable. You lost all the appreciation because the second that you did the owner finance, you capped your note. You changed from ownership to a note holder, and that note is capped. In fact, if they default and you don't have the right language in the documents, if they default, you're not even going to get a first right of refusal to match the price of the investor that's going to buy that house, the house that you used to own. Now they're going to buy that house and pay your note off. And if your idea was to get 8-10% interest on your note, now you've got cash, and that's not good. We want that note, right? That's why you do the owner finance. So appreciation is a big thing because these values are just gone through the roof. Things that I remember in 2003, 2005, people were giving away a certain type of property. They wouldn't even follow up on the leads. And these are mobile homes on lots and things like that. They would not even follow up on the leads. It's like, I don't have time for this junk. And now you look at the appreciation on that asset class, and it just blows you away. And it's true in most asset classes. So appreciation, depreciation, and of course income. Income's the other big one. Is it has that capacity to make income. When we're looking at numbers, and I was talking about Airbnb, when I know I can rent something for $1,200 a month, and I know what the holding costs are for it, and I say holding costs, but the cost of running that product, right? In other words, I'm collecting rent, and I know what that cost is. Then I can calculate what my cash flow is, and I've always felt like if I can get a couple $100 cash flow, and that's real cash flow, not the stuff that a promoter will tell you you're going to make, and it never turns out that way. But real cash flow, if I can make that couple $100, $300 a month, and then I get these other benefits, and then on top of that, another benefit is this is income producing, which means a tenant's paying for it. That's why I never got into land, is because I never could figure out how to make it produce income. And so you hold on to something 10 or 15 years, and it's like, how do I produce income? Now, the guys that do land is they'll tell me, and they're right, you just don't understand land. But I understand income, and if I can make that 200 or 300, and I can get that appreciation, and I'm in the path of progress, and maybe I can invite investors to be a part of what I'm doing because I can now offer them depreciation. I knew then that real estate was my bag. It was my thing. So you did have some things you wanted me to try to explain as far as what some of the numbers were.
Yeah. Well, first, before we get into that, you did have written down on our notes here that you want to say a few things about loan constant.
Well, a loan constant is I like those kinds of numbers because when we're doing creative real estate, we've got to look at our cash flow. And when you have a high loan constant, it means the loan balance is relatively low because, for example, it's been in place for a long time, but the payments are real high. So in other words, if you borrow I'm just going to make some numbers up, but if you borrow $100,000 and your monthly payment's $1,000, and it, of course it varies on the interest rate, the term, and all that stuff. But let's just say, just keep it simple. Okay, so $1,000 a month as $100,000. Well, on day one, your loan constant is low because the amount of money you're paying relative to what the loan balance is low. But let's say, like I've got a house right now that we have about a year's worth of mortgage left on it. It's almost free and clear. Well, our loan constant's real high because our loan balance is probably $11,000. In this example, it'd be $11,000, and our loan balance is $11,000, and our payment's $1,000. So our loan constant's through the roof. In other words, if I would have went out and just borrowed that $11,000 and amortized it over 30 years, my payment would be $30 a month. Instead, I'm paying $1,000 a month. So because my loan constant's out of whack, I have no cash flow. I basically own that property free and clear, but I have no cash flow. And so if you were to refinance it, then you could change that loan constant so it's back relative to what your balance is. So why that's important, I'm okay with that paying off fast like that because I don't need that monthly income to that level. But as an investor and you start doing a lot of these deals and you're starting to scale, you got to throw these numbers in a spreadsheet, and you got to look at them and say, look, I still need $5,000 or $10,000 a month to live on. My loan constants are keeping that from happening. So how do I change my loan constant? And in creative real estate, a lot of times we're buying properties from motivated sellers, and we're basically buying equity. That's so exciting to me. In other words, I can buy an asset that's worth $150,000 for $100,000. Why wouldn't I do that? And then I get tax benefits on top of that. Then I get appreciation on top of that. And if I got to learn, like we're talking about painting, you just got to learn it. You got to hang around those people that understand it, and you got to know. One thing is, if maybe I can give the audience a homework assignment, but look at a Schedule E. Pull out a Schedule E on the IRS. Go to irs.gov and pull up a Schedule E. And on a Schedule E, it shows what all your expenses are for real estate, right? I mean, it's got them listed out. And you just got to go through there and you got to plug in some numbers, and then you're going to know what your cash flow is. So if I know a certain area rents for $1,200 a month or $1,500 a month, I know what my cost of my money is and know what the cost of the rehab is. Then I can just figure out like, hey, I should be able to make $200 a month cash flow or $300. When we get into creative real estate, you can double and triple those numbers. It's unbelievable what you can do with those numbers.
I tell you, Ray, I'm gonna have to go back and watch this radio show just to learn all the things you've been talking about. I mean, that's what's the cool thing about us putting this on YouTube, right?
Yes, it is on YouTube. But I got a question for you. So you gave them a homework assignment. Is this just for them just to practice themselves, or do they need to turn it into you?
I don't know. They can turn it in. I'll look at it. One of the things is like, what do you plug in? You know, what do you plug in for these expenses? But one of the things that was kind of eye-opening to me when Audie and I were buying these properties, we'd go over and look at this house and say, oh, that's a beautiful house. That's going to be a great deal, blah, blah, blah. And then we'd go look at this house, and it's like, what a piece of crap. Do we really want it? And we'd have all these ideas and thoughts. And then 2, 3, 4 years later, you go back and you look at your Schedule E's. And I think one of the things you wanted to talk about, your return on investment. And it's like that little crappy house over there, it blew everything else away,
Right,
I mean,
right.
numbers wise.
And now it's worth $300,000.
Well, not or it just put money in. It depended what its job was, whether
Right.
to give me appreciation, because we've really never focused on appreciation, not like we do now. I now understand how important that is, and it's always been important. But I was always like, okay, I've got to eat, so I'm interested in cash flow.
Right.
And then I look at the Schedule E and I see that piece of little crap over there. That's massive cash flow, and these other things end up costing me money. And now, if you bring, and this is where you want to think about bringing partners in. A lot of times, things cost you money until you get them stabilized, until you get them under control, and that you may not have that negative cash flow. You know, I mean, it's not unusual for a partnership to be put together so that they're going to go out there and they're going to make something, and it's going to generate income, and they add money in there to pay the interest. In other words, they borrow an extra $50,000 so that they can pay the interest until they get it up and running, right? Because investors want to get their money back. They want to get that interest. So the promoters, the developers have to eat that money in the beginning. But I mean, you have to work that in there. You have to work that negative cash flow in there. And sometimes that means bring a partner to the table.
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about. Appreciation can bail you out, right? Because a lot of times, like for instance, a property I'm looking at right now, the repairs are probably going to be about $90,000 to get this thing up and moving. But the location is great because the property's appreciating at about 15 or 20% a year, right?
Yeah.
Just like my house, I bought it for $52,000 16 years ago, and now it's worth 9 times that much. So a lot of times these areas that are not desirable are in the path of progress.
On our panel last month, I think it was last month, where we had the 4 guys on there, they actually said that, and it is, in my own experience, it's true. Is if you're out there and you're wholesaling and you're flipping, you're like in and out, you're transaction oriented, and our show is massive passive. The whole point is you have to do that. That's a part of business. We're not saying don't do it, but one of the panelists said this. He said, when you're buy and hold, it doesn't matter really if you pay too much for something, or if you got in over your head, or they stole all the wiring out of the house an hour after you bought it. And it's that time fixes those problems. Time tends to fix those problems, and so those mistakes you make, you survive if you can be a buy and hold person. If you make that same mistake as a wholesaler, you're probably not out much except for your marketing and your time. If you make that mistake as a flipper, you're out of business. Mm-hmm. You figure that rehab wrong or whatever. But if I figured out the rehab wrong and I'm buying home, and that's what happened to us. Our very first deal, Audie and I did, I did the math because I had to do a case study. We made over $300,000 on that one property. On that one residential property, we made $300,000 over the life of it. And if Audie was on the radio show, I think he'd agree with me. We went way over budget on our repairs. We went way over budget on the time. But, after owning that asset for a long time, it was maybe the best thing we ever did.
Yeah, Ray's Audie's like his best kept secret. I've known Ray for like 11 years. I've never met Audie. He's afraid if I meet Audie, I'll hear the truth about Ray.
Yeah. Sharon and Audie and Jan. There's too many people that know me.
Yeah, like Audie might be invisible. You know? Oh, that's great.
No, it's good to have a partner that has your back all the time. We still meet in fact, we meet Tuesday mornings, and this last Tuesday we met at Denny's. Normally we meet in a Zoom call, but once a month we force ourselves to get together. And
I tell you, if you ever meet Ray, you'll know why we like Ray. Ray is a really good guy. I met Ray a long time
I'm still
ago.
trying to figure that out.
Well, I met Ray way back there when I was working for a hard money lending company and overseeing other projects and a home vest.
okay, Pat, I'll give you a raise. You don't have to say.
Well, no. Ray and I became friends the first.
Oh, is
time
that all
we
it
met.
takes?
Well,
Wait till next week's show.
Believe me, that's why you want to come to this, because it's being operated by one of the giants in this business.
I don't know about that, but
I do.
I keep plugging away.
Yeah, he's very shy. He won't even take that compliment. You know.
So, Ray, I want you to really quick. Well, Ray, really quick.
Yeah.
Well, we do have a limited
That's like
time
the
left.
people-
Well,
say-
that was only the first topic.
You know what the funniest question people ask is, "Hey, I want to ask you I got a quick question." Like, what is,
Well, the question might be quick, but the answer won't be.
It'll take a while.
ask me the questions that have quick answers.
Ask me when I'm sleeping.
So I want to, as fast as we can, because we do have a limited time left. I want to kind of go through some of the basics. We see all these acronyms out there, and so I want Ray to kind of just say what they are, and then like definition, and then maybe like one sentence about it. But we always see, and I'm gonna breeze through them really quick, and then let Ray take over. We see COC, which is cash on cash return ROI, return on investment.
Do you want to just me to spout off what I know about them as you go through them?
Just like a sentence.
Okay.
Well, let me just kind of
Yeah, 2
finish
words.
here. Cash on cash return ROI, return on investment, NOI, net operating income, and then you already talked about cap rate. So what are some good things that you need to look for in that? And what do those mean?
Okay, so which one you want to talk about first?
You're in charge right now.
Well, you
Yeah,
said
but
like
you
cash on cash.
forgot what they were. You got to tell him.
Cash on cash.
cash on cash is just if I put $100 in it and I make $1,000, then that's your cash on cash. So that returns super high, and a lot of times people quote that, but it doesn't factor in anything like risk or what things are. I mean, it could probably factor in appreciation. Not sure technically if it factors that in. It's not something I really look at. It's just not an important number for me. But cash on cash is however much cash you get and how much cash you get out.
Okay, now ROI, return on investment.
Return on investment is more like what does that asset cost, and then what did you make with that asset? If that asset costs $100,000 and you made $110,000, then that's your return on investment. And in that case, it'd be 10%. And normally people quote a lot higher numbers, like it's infinite, because they're not putting 100,000 in it. They're borrowing the 100,000, and that's why it's important to know your lenders and have them lined up. That's why with Alamo RIA I think we have 3 really great lenders, and they know their stuff, and they get you pre-approved and they get you lined up, and you can go out and make deals. I don't recommend making deals until you really have at least talk to those guys and know what you're doing, because you don't want to make promises and sign contracts without having real confidence you can close.
So do you ever factor if somebody brings you a deal and they say, this is your ROI and this is your cash on cash return, does that like not mean anything? You just strictly, well, how much am I going to put into it, and what's my monthly cash flow going to be?
I do look at, like when we're trying to structure a deal, like say a sub 2. If we're trying to structure a sub 2 and it's $30,000 in repairs and we have to put $30,000 down to fix the problem, like the arrears and the seller, and then there's a $60,000 balance, that's not a good sub two, because you're basically going to have to come to the table with $60,000 to get the property performing on some, depending on your exit strategy. But whatever your exit strategy is, that's what I mean by performing. There's 7 or 8 primary exit strategies you can have. So if I got to put $60,000 in it, and then I'm going to take over an existing loan, that's not a doable deal, because that when that sub two you're taking over is a first lien. So that $60,000 you're bringing to the table either has to come out of your bank, or it has to be brought by an investor who's going to get a second lien. And we try never to put investors in second lien positions. If people are happy to put you in second lien positions, you need to come to our RIA and ask me why not to do that, and I'll tell the whole audience why you shouldn't do it, because I've seen most deals that go bad are because there's no equity in it, because the people didn't understand what they were doing with second liens. So avoid second liens unless you're an expert. And that's the best way I can say it. Because if you're an expert, you know how to protect yourself. You know how to evaluate things. You're not asking opinions from other people. If you have to ask opinions, or you have to figure out the value based on other people's advice, you're not qualified to do second liens, in my opinion.
And a lot of times you hear that as a bridge loan, right?
Yeah, bridge loan, gap loan, all kinds of stuff. And you should not do those unless you're really, really confident and have a track record of doing it. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong with those that just won't go wrong with the first lien.
So just a quick question on you brought that up again. On that same example.
I want you to start. I want your practice. Just a quick answer. Let me ask you a question.
So that same example you just gave, 30 to solve the problem, 30 to fix it up. So 60 in it, 60,000 balance.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Now, what if that balance or what if that loan is, say, halfway through, like it's 15 years old? Would that make it better?
No, not
or
really.
What if it's
it actually makes it worse because your loan constant is high, which means that your cash flow is low. Right? The older the mortgage is, the higher your loan constant, the less cash flow. So probably not. And on top of that, you have to go back. Like a lot of times you won't know what the interest rates are for sometimes we're reconstructing deals. You can go in and type in Freddie Mac historical interest rate values, and you can find out what the interest rate was in 2006, 1996, whatever, and by the month. And so a lot of times we'll figure that in, but you'll see that the interest rates we can get our money for are not much different now than what those loans were originated at. So, so you just got to be careful. The perfect sub two is you're capturing a lot of equity and you're not taking a lot of cash out of your pocket. But now if I had to take a lot of cash out of my pocket and I didn't want to get rid of that second lien, then I might bring a partner in, or the first lien, I mean. So I might bring a partner in, but that partner is kind of an owner in the property. So it's not really a second lien, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
He's buying his way
Well, you put him on the
deal.
string too,
Yeah, he's in the deal.
So let's switch gears here, because we did mention, hopefully that answered your guys' question. If there is a topic that we have talked about on today's show or any other show, go to massivepassiveshow.com, and you can submit questions there. You can send emails and contact us through that site, and we'll definitely get back with you. And then also, if you come to our RIA meetings, then definitely pull us aside, stop us, and ask you questions.
What day is that next one?
The next one in San Antonio is this Tuesday. It's on the second Tuesday of the month, and then in Houston, it's next Saturday. It's on the second Saturday,
And it's 8:30 in the morning, right?
8:30 to noon. Networking, breakfast tacos. Get there early, because the breakfast tacos
With
they're a
100
hit.
people showing up, they go pretty quick.
Yeah. And a lot of stuff that we're talking about today, Tom Berry is going to be our keynote speaker next week, and he's gonna be able to cover a lot, in more detail. He'll have more time,
so you can get a chair, because this is going to be a packed event.
Yeah.
The first time I met Tom Berry was at a house. He was across the street buying a house, and I was on the other side of the street buying a house.
Yeah.
And I got to meet him and his wife.
Yeah, really nice guy.
And so he's also going to be doing that day, just to kind of mark your calendars. You know, he's also that after the meeting, he's going to be doing an afternoon session as well. And that information is also on our website, massivepassiveshow.com. So I do want to switch gears. I did mention earlier that we also have that property tour coming up, and I want to talk a little bit about, you know, because I know I really enjoy them, you know, as far as being there and walking through the houses and everything. But I know, you know, Pat and Ray, you guys love being a part of the conducting of that. So we got the 2-minute warning here. So spend 2 minutes talking about it and close us out.
Well, Pat can respond to what I'm about to say. Is what we typically do is we'll pair people up into 2 groups, and Pat will take them around the first group, and then the next house, that first group will have to unlearn everything Pat told them.
That's not what I heard.
And then I'll tell them the right way to do it.
You know, the cool thing about that is that all the students that commented to me said, man, that was just awesome, because they got both of us, because we both see the big picture, but we also little points that you saw that I didn't see, and vice versa, which is pretty cool.
Well, one thing, when Pat says he's done 1,000 rehabs, what I really hear when I hear that is this is a guy that's overcome 1,000 kick your butt opportunities, and he survived them. And
more than that,
yeah,
1,000 for each one of them.
Yeah, each one of them has
that was 1,000,000.
Yeah. And that really is important. You know, it's we came up with that MFO, monster for outcomes.
Yeah, I like that.
And if you're not that person, you need to become that person, or you need to hang around that person, and you need to get the passion that it takes to overcome these things. It's like these Airbnbs. It's not like, will I get through them? It's just, when will I get through them? And it's taking a lot longer. And you take on a project, you don't always know all the answers, right? I mean, a lot of times you get in there and you have to figure stuff out. Even as experienced as we are, there's still things we don't know the answers to.
No, and it will always be that way.
Right.
I mean, it will always be that way. I don't care how many. You could go do the same house plan in the same neighborhood, be totally different.
Right. And so how do people get a hold of us, James?
They get a hold of us through massivepassiveshow.com. That's massivepassiveshow.com.
Yeah, catch our YouTubes and all of our other stuff that you can catch on there. It's great. Are we off the air? Man, that was a good show.